everybody out there in Cryptid Land. Me and my buddy Dirty over there have a really cool guest for you tonight. Named David Lawson. And he's going to be talking to us about the Dakwa. That's a Cherokee legend about a giant fish. The word means whale, but we'll get into that when we talk to him. And you know what? We're going to go a little bit off topic tonight, but stuff is really interesting. So join us tonight on
the Cryptid Quest podcast.
Hey everybody out there in Cryptid Land. We have a great guest tonight, David Lawson, and he's going to tell us about a Cherokee legend called the Dakwa. I might be pronouncing it wrong. There might be other pronunciations, but he's going to set us straight on the whole deal. Let me introduce David. How you doing, David?
I'm good, sir. I'm good. And how are you?
I'm not doing bad, man. Not doing bad, except for all the rain falling on us right now in the Ozarks.
Let's not. We've had enough rain here in Tennessee. We've had enough of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, where I'm at, it's probably headed your direction. So.
Oh, yeah. And yes, you are correct with the pronunciation. It is Dakwa, however you want to put it in there. Roughly translated, that's Cherokee for either whale or giant fish.
All right. And that originates from, is it Tennessee?
Tennessee, yeah, really, it's actually Cherokee, which Cherokee extended from the northern part of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, up through the Tennessee Valley on up into Virginia, and if I'm not mistaken, into parts of West Virginia. Could even be further up. I'm really not 100% sure how far the Cherokee extended, but yes, it's a Cherokee word. It's from the Cherokee Nation.
Okay, very, very, very cool, very cool, man. I love the Indian legends, and and I know I say legend, but every legend has a foothold in reality, as far as I'm concerned. So there's got to be something behind it. So I'm gonna let you roll with it and tell us what you know about this amazing creature.
Well, the Dakwa, like I said, it's a Cherokee legend of a giant fish. And I'm an angler. I fished yesterday. I fished the day before. I'm probably going to fish again tomorrow. I mean, I'm on the water all the time, so fish is a lot of my life. So anything that deals with fish, I'm 100% interested in it. I love it. The Dakwa, what I read about how I got introduced to it, I read a story, and you might find different names of the rivers if you go to look this up. I did. I found different names. But it all kind of centers around the Tennessee River. Now, from what the story I read, there was a giant fish that lived in where now Tellico Lake, but then Tellico River emptied into the Tennessee River. There's a deep hole there where this fish reportedly lived. And it was very aggressive, especially and I'll get into some more stuff here in a minute that kind of points towards a certain type of fish. But it was a very aggressive fish. Anytime anything came near its nest, it would attack it. Well, this particular time, there was a long boat full of Cherokee braves that's going down. And sure enough, the fish, he got mad about it, came to the surface and attacked the boat. Knocked it over this time and knocked the Cherokee out into the water. They began to swim for the shore. And they ended up finding out that one of their party members had disappeared. Okay, they assumed he drowned. They'll find him downstream. They went looking and couldn't find him. Well, what had happened, reportedly in this story, that the Dakwa actually swallowed this Cherokee brave. Now, he's inside the belly of this fish, and I know it sounds a lot like the Noah story. And he's down inside the fish, and he's feeling around. He's lost his knife, can't find it, and he ends up feeling around, and he finds these large mussel shells that the fish had eaten previously. They're broken and cracked, and he began to slice his way through the stomach because these shells can be very thick. They can be very sharp, and he's cutting through this fish. He's cutting through the stomach of it, and he ends up essentially cutting his way out of it. Water starts pouring in. He pulls himself through the hole. The fish is on the other side of the bank. It's flopping. It's in pain. It's dying. When he comes to the surface, he finds out that when he comes to the surface, his skin has been bleached. His hair has been bleached. And the rest of the people in the boat was just shocked and surprised to see him. And that's kind of where the story goes. Well, here's the thing about the Dakwa. And I'll go ahead and tell you, it's pointing towards a specific species of fish. It's a catfish. Now, there's only two kinds of fish that could actually be the Dakwa. That's the blue cat or the flathead. And I'm more kind of lean towards the flathead part myself because it's the only fish I know that, first of all, can reach those sizes. It has a very large mouth that can actually. It actually goes completely from one side of its head to the other. So this fish actually has a very wide and very large mouth. They can reach very large sizes. Now, here's the thing. Now, a lot of people might think, well, how can a fish swallow a 6 foot tall, 150-pound man? But you got to think about something. The Cherokee started actually training their youth to be braves at a young age. So we're looking at maybe 11 or 12 years old. So you can imagine there's probably young kids on this boat. So you can't just say, okay, well, then the fish swallowed a child. He would surely die. Well, a lot of times when a fish eats something off the surface, it gulps a lot of air with it, which is very possible. Okay, I do know for a fact from cutting open, and this is going to sound gory, I know, but cutting open the bellies of fish, because when you're fishing, you want to know what are they eating.
Mm-hmm.
And really what you want to do is cut the stomach open to see what they're eating. I have found mussel shells inside of the bellies of flatheads and also blue cats and as well as channel cats as well. But I wouldn't think channel cat would be something that it don't get that large.
Yeah, no.
But the flathead eats mussels, and also as far as the bleaching of the skin and the hair, the first thing that usually leaves any kind of a prey item is the color. The stomach acids will in fact bleach out the colors.
Yeah.
So we know what they eat, and what they're and they're very aggressive when they're in the spawning stage. When they're spawning, they are highly aggressive. They'll attack anything that comes near their nest. Now, here's something that's really interesting. I said that this fish lived in a big hole, about 100 yards up from where the Tellico River empties into the Tennessee River. I was looking at a topographical map, and I tried to find the map. I can't, but there's actually a deep depression right there in about 100 yards up. So the location is there. So
by how deep do you think that is there from what it says?
Well, if I remember correctly, it was going along about 50 feet. Then all of a sudden it drops to about 60 feet and then comes back up. Now, I could be off on that. It could be a little shallower. But, it is about at least a 5 to 10 foot hole there that this fish was living in.
Gotcha.
And they do spawn in holes. Flat love holes to spawn in. That's where people that go noodling, they'll reach up underneath the bank and they'll pull them out of holes, or they'll find holes in the bottom and they'll reach and pull them out. I won't do that.
Me neither.
I might find the business end of a snapping turtle, but but they do spawn in holes. They like to live in holes, and a fish that large is going to have to have a big hole to live in.
Yeah. So and you're right with as far as like the mouth size, like flatheads, I've seen some pretty dang big flatheads, and their mouth it's humongous. It's humongous. Their head's actually usually bigger than their body, from what I've seen, and I can and you're right about the aggressiveness, because that's where the whole thing about noodling, what it's all about. Them crazy effers are sticking their arms in and letting these things latch hold of them. So they're, again, let you know that they're not afraid to put anything in their mouth.
No, they will viciously attack you. In fact, there's been some noodlers that has reached in and grabbed a hold of a flathead that's too big, and they've actually drowned from it. People's
Oh
died
wow.
from needles, and that's why I would never do it. Now, I'd rather do mine on hook and line. That way, we both got a fighting chance. But if
Yeah.
I'm in the water, I reach and I grab something, and it's you don't know how big this fish is going to be. And let's be honest, this story was pre-European, so this happened before the Europeans began coming over, and basically, and I hate to say it this way, just ransacking the land and taking
Yeah.
everything they could.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, the Cherokee they respected the land. They took what they wanted and what they needed, and what they didn't take was allowed to grow. So you got to figure these fish had the opportunity to grow to large. They grow as long as they're alive. I know they do slow down their growth after a certain time, but they do grow as long as they live. But it gives these fish, if as long as it lives, it's going to grow, and it gives it the chance to reach gargantuan sizes. And there's another thing, and I read about this in a history book. They actually said that right before the Civil War, it would not be unusual to see large catfish hanging side by side, beef hanging along the Mississippi River. They would be as long as almost as long as a fish as a beef carcass hanging there.
Holy
They'd have
cow.
fish and beef side by side, just hanging there because they were so large, and they were a great food source for anybody. You know, you catch a large catfish, you can eat off that for weeks.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of pounds of meat, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because
Absolutely.
they I tend to agree with you that I'm sure that they grew way bigger way back when before all the pressure on them. But nowadays, even with the pressure that's on them and the overfishing and everything that we do, they still get huge. So
I
you can only imagine how big they got way back then.
Well, I actually done some research. There's a reservoir, Toledo Bend, I think is what it's called, and I encourage everybody. What I'm saying, look it up. Do your research. Don't just take what I say for granted. Look it up. Do your own research. There's a place called Toledo Bend that actually has catfish so large that the divers that work around the dam insist on shark cages.
Wow.
That
That's
is a big fish to scare a diver. Now
yeah.
I know. Now, and I know there's stories all over the South. In fact, anywhere there's a dam, there's a story behind it where the diver goes in the water to check the dam. He sees a big fish out in the water. He gets scared. He sells his diving gear, vows to never ever dive again. There's not a dam, and I don't think in the U.S. that doesn't have that story behind it. But like you said earlier, every story has an element of truth to it, and you can
100%.
look it up. You can look it up. Wells catfish. I mean, those things can grow
Oh
to
yeah.
enormous sizes. So who's to say the flathead and the blue cat can't do the same thing? Um, a man in South Carolina caught a 103-pound blue cat. I mean, this has been several years ago, but these right here in Tennessee, a good friend of mine, he caught a 100-pound cat. I mean, so they're out there. Big fish are
Oh
out
yeah.
there.
Well, you're talking about those. My nephew, and you're talking about the flathead. My nephew actually caught 104 and a half pound blue cat and 104-pound flathead.
Mhm.
And I was there. Actually, I was there when he landed the blue cat.
Oh
Um,
wow!
and I'm telling you, it sounded. He got it on not really a limb line. He was drilling holes into the logs that the Corps of Engineers put along the Missouri River, and he was putting 3/4 inch fiberglass rods in there, and then
Mhm.
dangling the bait off. Well,
Yeah.
when he caught it, he went and when he gaffed it to bring it into the boat, it swung its neck and snapped that damn 3/4 inch rod like no, and I mean it was solid. It
Wow.
sounded like a gunshot going off. So they got power too.
They do. Well, you say that. I hooked into a big cat, and I couldn't tell you if it was a blue or a channel. I know it was a cat the way it was pulling, because I've fought catfish before. They all, and if you fish long enough, you get to know about what you're pulling in. Uh, I hooked into a big one. I had 20-pound test and a deep sea rod. That's what I mean. I'm serious about my fishing. And and this fish rushes the surface. Now, anybody that's ever hooked a catfish knows that they like to spin, and they'll
Yeah.
start spinning. And what they're doing is they're just spinning that line up on their body. They're basically they're not stupid animals. They're really actually smart if you give them credit. And then it just dove over and it snapped that 20-pound test line like it was rotten thread. I mean, it
Wow.
took nothing for it to break, and
Wow.
it was pulling me towards the water. So
That's scary.
it's kind of bad that
Yeah.
it broke. Because
That's scary.
I didn't want to know who's going to win that tug of war, and I was kind of putting my money on the fish already because
Oh man.
I was losing. Now, a lot of people would say, now, does a fish like that, a fish of that size, could it even exist today? With all the commercial fishing and the overfishing and people looking for the next trophy. I know a man personally, and he was a family member of mine. He's since passed away. Was fishing in one of our local lakes and one of my favorite fishing holes. Okay, now this is going to sound like a fishing story, and if anybody doesn't believe me, I don't blame you. But if he hadn't have told me, I wouldn't have believed it myself. But he's fishing, and it's a calm day. The water's nice and still, and there's two Canada geese swimming up the lake, and he's just sitting there, just kind of watching. Well, all of a sudden, there's this loud splash. He looks over and he sees this huge white belly just roll, and all of a sudden, that back goose just disappears. It's gone. It does not ever resurface. The other one takes off, and he said that's all he saw was just this white belly, where the fish must have come up
Mm-hmm.
and inverted and just took it. And
Wow.
I'll be honest with you, there's only two fish I know that could do that, and that's the blue cat and the channel cat. Those are the only two. I mean, not the channel. I'm sorry, the
Flathead.
flathead.
Yeah.
Those are the only two fish I know that could have the possibility of even doing that, for something to take anywhere between a 10 to 15-pound Canadian goose, full size Canadian
Yeah,
goose.
them are big.
I mean, it had to be massive.
Yeah, yeah. So and then kind of backtracking just a little bit. You were talking about how the brave found the mussel shells inside the belly. Well, something I got to point out, and I don't think you did earlier, but I'm sure you already know this. Mussels around here, people might be thinking, well, freshwater mussel, but no. Sometimes they get like this big, and you're 100% right on that being able to cut something pretty
Yeah.
easily, and and that's what those fish feed off of. So I mean that makes a lot of sense for
It
that
does.
to be able to happen.
It does. I've actually caught, well, my son actually, we were fishing in one of our local ponds, and he caught a mussel, and I didn't. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, how did you snag a rock? And he pulls it up and he shows me, and it's a mussel almost the size of a softball.
Yeah,
So if they're able to survive in a pond and grow that size, in a lake where there's a lot more food, a lot more filtration for them to filter feed, they can grow to giant sizes. And like I said, back in those days, they didn't have the pollution, they didn't have the overfishing, they didn't have any of that stuff. They were able to just grow unharassed. They could do
yeah,
what they want.
yeah. And well, and then back to when you were talking about like um, the the legends of the big catfish and in the deep parts and by dams, and like no dam doesn't have that legend, but that's the first time I live, in the Ozarks, but the first time I ever heard of a story like this, and it really, really intrigued me, was there were divers that said they saw catfish the size of Volkswagens at the
Yeah,
bottom of Lake of the Ozarks Dam. And they were too scared to go down there and do the work that they needed to do because of the size of these fish, which
exactly. Hmm.
which scared the hell out of me too. And you could,
I mean,
you can imagine it with the mouth that big, and going back to even the brave. I don't know that it would even necessarily have to come out and get it, but you open a mouth that big, it's probably just going to suck you right in. Kind of
Oh
like
yeah,
groupers. I think that's what they do.
exactly. I mean, all fish when they go to feed, they open their mouth and they just let the water current suck it right in because all that is it's just a giant vacuum.
Yeah.
That's all it does. It's just a giant vacuum. I've sat and watched fish feed, and a lot of times they're not even really that close to the food source, but they open the mouth and it's just like soup right into their mouth. It's gone. It just sucks it right in. So
Yeah.
you figure you got a catfish with a mouth the size of an umbrella, that sucker, and they can open their mouth huge. I've actually watched catfish that were about maybe a foot and a half, 2 feet long, open their mouth and take like a 10-inch bluegill.
Holy
I mean,
cow.
they could just swallow a large food source whole, but they have to be designed to do that.
Yeah.
So that's how nature prepares them. They don't have hands. They very well can't reach out and grab it. So
Yeah.
they have
And
to.
I tend to think I'm not as much of a fisherman as you are. I mean, even though I probably should be since I'm surrounded by lakes and rivers, but I don't always have the time. But I would tend to think that catfish just they're eating machines. That's what they
Yes.
do. I think they probably pretty much kind of like when they always say how sharks they cut their belly open, they find cans and this and that. I think a catfish probably might not be too far off from that.
No,
If it
no,
sees you and thinks you're food, whether you're food or not, it's going to
your
try to
food.
get you.
Yeah, your food. I have a lot of people don't know this. Catfish, the whole, and like I said, I fish, so therefore I study fish as much as I can. Catfish is basically a swimming tongue. Their body has taste buds all over their. Catfish don't have scales like like normal
Yeah,
fish. They got skin. That skin has taste buds all over it,
I
from
didn't know
their
that.
their whiskers, of course, have taste buds, but so does their skin. They're basically a swimming tongue.
Huh.
If a drop of blood hits their body, they're going to know it. So if there's something out there that they like the flavor of it and they taste it, even if it's on their tail, they're going to turn and go toward it. They're going to find it. They are hunting machines. And a lot of people think, well, they just eat dead stuff off the bottom. No, no. Actually, I have cut catfish open and found lures in their belly.
Oh
So
wow.
they will
Well,
attack lures. They'll attack live bait.
I actually
Uh,
have a short, quick little interjection. One time when I was fishing, caught a freaking it was a channel cat, but I caught it on a spoon.
yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. But yeah, they do. They'll attack lures. They are very predatorial, and they'll take things off the surface. This last, I don't know if you had them up where you was at, but we had a cicada horde last
Oh
year
yeah,
come out.
yeah, yeah. We
Two
had
of
them
them.
too.
Well, anytime you find the cicadas out around the river, around your lakes, go fishing. You'll catch everything. I caught catfish off the surface. I mean, catfish are not just bottom feeders. They'll feed anywhere they can,
Yeah,
and they'll pull them, and then if there's something on the surface they're going after it. So don't, there's a lot of stigma and a lot of stereotypes about catfish. They are highly aggressive predators when they want to be. And in order to survive some of these lakes, you've got to be the top predator. And in many cases, they are.
yeah, yeah. There's not. I don't think there's a whole lot of fish out there that can. I mean, yeah, maybe when they're smaller, whatever. But once they start getting up to size, not really a
Mhm.
whole lot of fish out there in the rivers or lakes that can compete with them. I don't think.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
But
No, go ahead.
so I was just gonna say, so for this Cherokee legend, I think you're spot on. You're spot on with your assessment of what you think it is, um, because I mean, yeah, it could possibly be a blue cat, but honestly, the biggest most aggressive to me would be the flathead. Um,
Mhm.
so, and there's just and like I already said, and like you said, every legend has a source that it came from. Legends,
Yeah.
I don't think they're just made up, and it is so similar to the Bible story about Jonah and the whale. Is that? And I think it was a whale. Was it a whale or just a
It was
fish?
well,
Oh,
the Bible says he prepared a large fish,
okay.
but most people say it's a whale. In fact, some would go as far to say it was a sperm whale because sperm whales are one of the few whales that can dive as deep as what the Bible said that that Jonah was taken. Um, I made reference to it earlier. I might have said Noah by mistake. If I did, I apologize. I meant Jonah. But yeah,
Jonah, yeah, Jonah.
it said that it actually took him down to the mountains of the deep. Well, see, here's the thing. Before, I want to say the 1950s, we didn't even know there was mountains in the ocean.
That's true. That's
But
true.
but the Bible did say a giant fish or prepared a great fish. And like I said, Dakwa means either whale or giant fish.
Yeah, I looked that up earlier, and that was the translation I got. It said whale,
Mhm.
but I mean a whale's even though a whale is actually not a fish. Back
Mhm.
then they probably didn't know the difference.
It's in the water, it's a fish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's swimming in the water. It's a fish. So I can kind of get those connections pretty easily without stretching too much. But so um, are there any more like little legends you know about? Like, or have you ever had a weird experience at all? Or
As far as fish, well, I mean, like I said, that one that I hooked that time that me and him was
got
playing
drug
tug of
you in?
war. Yeah, that would have been a monster fish. He would have probably been at least 80 pounds or better.
Holy cow!
At least that's what my nephew was telling me. He said for something to do that, it had to have been at least close to 80 pounds.
Yeah, to
Uh,
surf a line like
yeah, it's a
that.
big fish. Snap 20-pound test. It had to
Yeah.
have been a big fish. Um, I've heard people hooking into like float. They were like floating in a boat below the dam, and something grabbed their line, and they just can't stop the boat. The boat's being dragged behind them, dragged, and whatever's in the water is just taking them wherever it wants to go. And their only chance is to cut the line because they couldn't move it, they couldn't pull it up. And these are modern tales of this. They're not, this isn't something the 1800s or even the early 90s. This is modern stories where people talk about hooking into something they just can't move.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a fish out there big enough to swallow a person. I really can't say. I don't want to say no because, to be honest with you, the possibilities are still there. They have put regulations on the size of catfish you can keep here in Tennessee. You're only allowed to keep two that's over, I want to say, 32 inches or something that are
Oh
30 inches.
wow, really?
So they've actually put a limit to the size of them. People used to be pulling giant, fish as long as your leg out and keeping every one of them. Well, they put a stop to that, and they only allow certain, two of a certain size, which means the rest of them have that ability now to grow larger. And uh, and it also puts the breeding population. See, you're a larger fish, that's your breeding population.
So
The
so
small,
so do you think that with these new regulations in place that possibly one day we might end up with somebody else getting taken by a fish? I mean,
I hope not, but I will say this: there are people that drown. They never they don't find their bodies.
yeah, that's
So
true.
is it a possibility that they're being swallowed by these big fish? I'm not going to say no because it's very possible. Someone drowned. They go to the bottom. A big flathead finds them. That's an easy meal. I don't
Yeah.
want to sound morbid, but it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And and then because there's been reports in other countries of large fish that have attacked humans. So I don't see no reason why that's not possible here. Now, is it likely? I'd say your odds are slim at this point of getting attacked by a giant catfish, but not ever zero.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this Cherokee legend of the Dakwa, does you say it's around Georgia, Tennessee? Um, Man, I should have done my homework a little more before this, but I'm just curious if there's any more like giant fish legends from any other tribes, around the country. But
I don't know. Only one I'm familiar with is the Cherokee. But as far as bodies of water, you have to look at the Mississippi. I mean, that thing in some
yeah,
places is a mile wide. So you could easily hide big fish in there. Oh, and,
okay,
and then that reminds me too of now, like I said, this is just a story. You can take it with a grain of salt. I had a cousin who used to go diving, and they were in the and he said that his big accomplishment was diving in the Mississippi River. The
that's scary.
instructor told, yeah, his instructor told him, he said, now I'm going to tell you this. He said, you can believe it or not. He said, I was diving once and I was looking behind me at at the two people that was diving with him. And he said, when he turned his face to look forward, he said his face mask just had a giant eyeball in it. He said it was almost taken up by the eye almost took his entire face mask up.
Oh my
He said
lord.
he just kicked back and just started swimming. He's pointing them, swim to the surface, swim to the surface. And he surfaced and he said, get out of the water. He said, I don't know what that was, but he said, I don't want to be nowhere near it. Now, this was back like in the 70s, early 80s. So this has been some years back. But he was telling that instructor was telling my cousin what had happened. And he said, so whatever you do, he said, if you see a big shadow, he said, just go to the surface.
Oh wow, that's scary. That's
Yeah.
scary. So I've got, and this isn't a legend. This actually happened. I'm gonna quiz you real quick. You might know about this. Do you know what? And I think this is true. Do you know what the furthest inland shark attack that ever occurred was?
If I'm not mistaken, Lake Erie. I know it.
Maybe.
I know it. No, hold on, hold
Is
on. I
that
think I'm
it?
off. No, I think I'm off on that. I want to say, I know it was up. Gosh, if you hadn't asked me, I'd have probably known. I know
Ah,
it was
sorry.
up. No, it was. I know there was a shark attack in New York up the river.
Okay.
I also know whenever there was a shark went up the Delaware. I do know there was a shark went up the Delaware River. I know about that. I do know. Gosh,
I got
I
one
know
for you. How about St. Louis?
St. Louis, Missouri. Yes, I do remember that. Now
I
that you
think it was
mentioned that.
actually Alton. It was the Illinois River. Scared the crap
Yeah.
out of me when I heard about this. But yeah, I think it ended up getting two people. There's these boys that went swimming, and you wouldn't think it's a little river that runs off the Mississippi, and
Hmm.
it was a bull shark. I think that's
Yes,
what it was because they can
it
breed
was a bull shark. Yes.
both. They can go from salt water to fresh water, and
Yes.
that's scary, man. So when you started telling me about the diver, that immediately went into my mind. And the only reason I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, the only reason I even know about it is because I'm from the area. I grew up right outside St. Louis. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the one of the things you hear that always sticks in your mind that you're like, yeah. Because
And to be honest, any river that connects to the ocean, the Mississippi or any of them, there's always a chance a bull shark can swim up it. They've been finding them, like you said, up the Mississippi into I mean, there's a number of places, and I'm trying to think if it was Lake Erie had one in it. I don't think it was. Now that I think back on it, but hey, them sharks go where they want. I mean, and them bull sharks, they are highly aggressive. They don't care.
well, apparently my producer says the furthest inland attack was 21, 2,175 miles in. Is that right, Dirty? Where was it? Alton. Okay, that was the one I was talking about. Yay, I win. Alton. Yeah, that was the Illinois River. The Illinois River's not, now you got to worry about damn Japanese carp attacking you on that damn thing because they come jumping out. That I think it's infested by them. So you guys got that problem down there with the
Not to the
Asian carp?
not not in my area, thank goodness, but some lakes are pretty much eat up with them. In fact, in some lakes in Tennessee, they're actually offering $100 reward for anybody that brings a tagged silver carp in.
Oh, really? Oh, is that
Yeah,
then a name for them, silver carp?
yeah, silver carp, Asian carp,
Okay.
worthless fish, whatever you want to call them. That we'll
Yeah.
go with all those names.
Piece
I
of.
don't like them. Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go. So, uh, so man, oh man, this the whole story about the Brave, and I think you're spot on with another part of that when you were talking about how the Braves were young when they went out. So it is so possible that it was just a young a young Brave, you know. Like, but then again, like we were saying too, it, who knows how big fish might have grown back then. I mean, it might have been able to easily take a man.
You're right.
Um,
A danger. I mean, it could have it could have been able to take anybody because we don't know. We weren't there.
yeah, yeah,
And I'll be honest with you. I would put a lot of stock in a lot of these legends. And granted, all these legends are word of mouth. For the most part. But there's just the biology and the science behind it. It just kind of makes it almost. It makes it believable. It makes it biologically believable.
yeah, yeah, and that's what I really got out of it because I'm gonna be honest with you. The one thing that I I would rather, not that I would rather, I tend to believe pretty much all Native American legends, lore, and otherwise because they weren't bullshitters, you know.
Mm-mm. No.
Um, they and going into another a cryptid, they all have something about Bigfoot, but
Yeah.
um, and one thing my buddy Ryan we talked about the seven grandfather laws, I think is what he called it, and it's a creature for um, every law, and the one for honesty is a Sasquatch, and they that was part of their reality. It was just another animal, and so that's what makes me think that it's very possible that this is reality. This
Mhm.
was their reality back then. Just
Yes.
because we don't know that reality doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yes. Exactly.
So and then oh my gosh, the about the goose getting swallowed up,
Yeah.
man. What was the name of that? Was that in a lake or a river?
It was in a lake. It was in Fort Loudon Lake.
Okay.
And anybody that from Tennessee that watches this podcast, you're going to know right away where Fort Loudon Lake is. So, but yeah, that's and it's right. And to be honest, it was probably about 200 yards below the dam.
Okay. So two places you'll never catch me swimming: Fort Loudon Lake and the Illinois River. you could.
Yeah, that lake is it's the currents and just it's a dangerous lake. There's always warnings about it. One day the current might be nice and easy, then the next day you just got a torrent going down through there. I mean, it's unreal how that water is.
Uh, isn't it kind of crazy? We're talking about fish and rivers and lakes, and we got all this rain blowing through here right now. I think
Yeah.
my producer Dirty was telling me that we've got like 12 inches coming in the next couple days.
Well,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. It makes it a little difficult to navigate around the lake when that stuff happens, but we'll figure it out.
oh yeah, and bodies of water get changed so much. We had a lot of flash flooding during the hurricanes. and there's still debris up over where the water normally is. There's logs. I mean, huge logs, huge pieces of driftwood up on the side of the bank, up on the rocks. And I mean, the water, the lakes get changed all the time. Every time there's a flood, or every time the lakes are
Yeah.
constantly changed. People say that lakes are stagnant. Oh, they're really not. They're very much alive,
Yeah.
and they change periodically. You've heard of an oxbow lake? It's basically where two river ends meet, and they kind of form just kind of like a lake. And they just, we're basically just two bends of a river meet. And if I'm not mistaken, that's if I'm my geography or my
Sounds
whatever
right.
is correct. And so rivers are constantly changing. They don't change fast, but they change constantly. And you got to think, the fish use that to their advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, when they built the dams, people are like, well, that's going to mess the fishing up. When in fact, it improved it in some cases, because now these fish, they're stuck below the dam. Those turbines grind up fish into chum, and they
Yeah.
just sit there on the lower end, and they just eat those pieces of fish like at the buffet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you, I live right here where Lake Taneycomo goes into Bull Shoals, and I'm telling you, right at the dam, so many that you have to you're elbow to elbow with people fishing because that's the spot. It's right
It
below the dam, right below the dam. After, like you said, everything gets spit out like chum or chunks, or it's like a fast food buffet. Hey, come on.
is. It
and
really
and
is.
when those alarm bells go off for the dam to open up, and that's another thing I wonder is if those fish can actually sense that stuff when the alarm goes off. Maybe that calls them in.
Well, funny you should mention that. I know, and I know I keep saying I know a guy because I know a lot of fishermen.
Oh, that's all
But
good.
there's a fella that actually has his own pond, and he has it stocked with catfish. He'll walk out, ring a bell, and start throwing out food. Those catfish hear that bell,
Yeah.
and they all come to that one side. And he's sitting here throwing this food into them, and they all come to him. So I don't see any and there are a lot of places that have automatic feeders set up for fish,
Yeah.
and they know when to show up. It's just like I was talking about the cicada horde
Yeah.
when they start. I mean, I walk down there, look down in the water, and you could just about throw a net in there and get your limit. I mean,
Wow.
there was literally hundreds of fish just lined up right there, just stacked out, eating the cicadas as it's falling in. So yeah, when those bells go off, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't, because fish are smarter than you give credit for. One thing of interest, I think it was Ohio University, and you could check me on this, but they actually did a study that they took a large tank like what you would see at Bass Pro, and they put a divider in it, and they put different types of freshwater fish, catfish, bass, bluegill, crappie, perch. They put them in there, and they put a hole in the middle of the glass so you could with kind of like a little red ring around it so the fish could see it. And they got them a chance to get acclimated. Well, they'd move all the fish to one side, and then they drop this shape in the water, just a red shape. And then they would do a mild electric shock. It took the bass only about 3 days to realize if they go through that hole, they don't get the shock. The perch never learned. They stayed on that one side. So the perch are not the brightest fish, but
Yeah.
all the rest of them in due time, every one of them, from the bass to the bluegill, they learned
Huh.
if I go through this hole, I don't get shocked.
That's
So that
super
tells you right there.
interesting.
So fish have an intelligence. They can be taught. They can learn. So you
Yeah.
got to understand that fish are not just these dumb, mindless eating machines that just go through the water and all of a sudden they just get caught. There are actually some intelligence to them.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, but doesn't sound travel a lot further in water?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, a fish can actually hear a worm wiggle in the water.
What?
They can feel the vibrations, and they can actually feel it. They
Oh,
can that
wow.
lateral. Well, see, fish have that lateral line that goes through the side of their body. That's
Yeah.
just tiny little nerves. they can feel vibrations off of that, and they can literally feel a worm wiggling on the bottom of the water. I can't tell you how far out they can feel it,
Yeah.
but if the worm's wiggling, they're going to know. They're
Wow.
going to detect it, and they're going to find it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I didn't know
Like,
that. That's sensitive. Wow.
well, see, like that, I study fish. If you fish as much as I do, you try to learn as much about it as possible.
Yeah.
And love fish. I mean, not
Yeah.
just to catch, to eat, and to study.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. Well, that's fun. Well, David, I had a great time talking to you tonight. It learned a lot of stuff. I know we went a little bit off the cryptid topic, but we got a heck of a cool story that I've been dying to talk about. I've been dying to talk about the big catfish, and you brought it to the plate for me tonight with your Dakwa. Yeah, and I am digging it. So
Well, I do want to just say this real quick. I
yeah,
know
go ahead.
a lot of people think about, cryptids are just legends. You start looking back at the biology and the science of it, you might be surprised to find out just how many cryptids are actually historically correct, biologically correct, and you might find that a lot of these cryptids people like to talk about, Dakwa, Bigfoot, and all these others, are not that far fetched after all.
Yeah, they're really not. They're really not. So you just have to have a little bit more open mind to the world and what's going on around you, kind of like the Native Americans. Man, I wish I could transport myself back then because the world we're living in now is crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. David, I really enjoyed it. Everybody, let's say thanks to David for coming on the Cryptid Quest podcast tonight in Cryptid Land.
Keep it creepy.
Yeah, out in the woods where the shadows creep, I'm trying to find a legend that the people keep. Bigfoot's the name, got a story to tell. Footprints in the mud, can't you hear the bell? Whispers in the night, can you feel that chill? Bigfoot on the run, he's a legend, keep it real. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride. Like I'm on a quest, searching for the homie, you know he's the best. Got my camera ready, heightened senses on blast. Snap a shot of Sasquatch, legend unsurpassed. Eyes in the dark, you can't catch what you can't see. King of the woods, living wild and free. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride.